Today we're going to talk about the projector in human design. And if you haven't already, please feel free to check out my other videos where you can learn more about human design and how you can use it in your life. Because the more you know about yourself, the easier life gets. So let's look at the projector and what it means to be a projector in human design. As you can see from the diagram, the projector is the third rarest type in human design. It makes up approximately 20% of all the types. So what makes a projector a projector? Well, let's find out. Of the 5 human design types, only 2 have defined sacrals, yet they make up the biggest population of human design types. And the other 3, that make up just over 30%, all have open sacrals. As you can see from the diagram, a reflector has no centers defined, and for that reason, they're pretty easy to identify. But since both a manifestor and a projector have defined centers and undefined sacrals, their body graphs can look quite similar. But if you take a closer look, you'll see that a manifestor has what's called a motorized throat and a projector doesn't. So if you look at the image of the projector, you'll notice that they have a defined root, which means that's a motor defined, but that there's no actual complete channels that go directly to the throat. A channel is made up of 2 gates. When you don't have a complete channel, you have what's called a hanging gate. So if you look at the projector, there's a black line coming off the throat center, and that's considered a hanging gate. That actual gate would be gate 12. And if you look at the manifestor's chart, you'll see that the gate 12 and the gate 22 are defined, and they make a channel 1222, which takes the emotional center, which is a motor, directly to the throat. If you watched any of my other videos, you probably would have seen this chart already, but I'm just going to go quickly over the motors and what they do in human design for anybody who hasn't. There are 4 motors in human design. The strongest motor is the sacral center, and the weakest is the root center, because it's the furthest away from the throat center. Only 2 types have a motorized throat, or what's called a direct connection from a motor to the throat, and those are a manifesting generator and also a manifestor. The other 3 human design energy types don't have a motor to the throat, and because of this, they're considered people who need people. Since a projector doesn't have a motorized throat, I'm not really going to talk about it, so if you want to find out more, just check out my other videos where I talk more about a motorized throat in a manifestor and also a manifesting generator. And for the purpose of this video, we'll be mainly talking about what it means to have a non-motorized throat, like a projector has. So we can see that all projectors will have an open sacral and no direct channels to the throat. But what can sometimes confuse people is why a projector might have a brown square, or what's called a defined throat, because most people would assume that if the throat is brown, then it's defined, so it has to have a motor to the throat. But that's not actually true. There are other ways to define the throat, and they don't necessarily have anything to do with a motor. The throat center can be connected and defined when the channels from the identity center, the ajna, also the spleen, are complete. Complete channels to all these centers would give a defined throat, but it wouldn't give a defined motorized throat. And what's the difference between a defined throat and an undefined throat? In human design, whenever we talk about an open center or an undefined center, it means that the energy coming into that center is inconsistent or can change based on the people you're with. When something's defined, it means that the energy is more consistent. In the case of a defined throat center, it means that the way you speak and what you speak about can be dependent upon the gates or the channels that are linked to your throat. So for instance, if your throat is connected to your solar plexus or emotional center, then you could talk a lot about your feelings. Of course, there's more to say about the throat center, but for the purposes of this video, understanding that a brown square does not mean a motorized throat is all we need to know. And also that projectors can have an open throat or a defined throat and still not have a motorized throat. I've already talked about projectors, reflectors, and also generators being people who need people, and manifesting generators and manifestors having the energy they need to manifest already. So let's talk about exactly what that means. So if we know that the throat is the center for manifestation, and that everything in human design is about getting energy to the throat so that things can happen, how can people who don't have a motorized throat get things to happen in their lives? And that's where electromagnetics come into play. So if you look at the diagram, person A has the gate 12, and it's defined, but it doesn't have the opposite gate, which is the gate 22. But person 2 has a gate 22. When these people are together, then they can talk about their emotions, and also they'll bring a motor to the throat. Now, if neither of these people actually have a motor to the throat, then this is helpful for both of them. And even if one person has a motor to the throat already, but yet they don't have a connection to the throat from the emotional center, this can give them an opportunity to talk about their feelings where they may not feel comfortable doing that with other people. Because the theory is that whatever gets to the throat is something that you can talk about. And if it doesn't get to the throat, you might have more of a difficult time talking about it. The theory about electromagnetics is that basically we're always looking for the match to the hanging gates in our chart, or we're naturally attracted to people who, for lack of a better word, complete us. So what this all says is that even though a projector doesn't have a motor to the throat, electromagnetics and even planetary transits can give them the connections that they need to have things happen in their lives as well. And another way that projectors look similar to manifestors is that they have an open sacral. And what that means is that unlike a generator type who has a defined sacral or a battery pack of workforce energy, a projector, just like a manifestor, has an open sacral. And so that means that their energy isn't as consistent and is influenced by the people that they're around. So just like a manifestor, a projector can be out in the world gathering a lot of sacral energy and get very revved up because the sacral is all about all the things we do to survive as a human race. But when they get home or out of the environment and the energy dispels, they may feel quite exhausted. And just like a manifestor, a projector can believe that the energy they have is consistent and always available whenever they want it. But that's just not the case. But because of this, when projectors believe that they always have a constant supply of energy at their disposal, they can have what's called burnout. And just like a manifestor, the trick for a projector is to know how their energy works and to use the energy to their advantage, but also to know that the energy cannot be counted on to be there whenever they want it to. Because it's easy to think that the energy is always going to be there, because not only do projectors take in the energy, they also amplify it. So they can have vast amounts of energy when they are out in the world, but tap out completely when they're back in their own space away from people. And a theme for someone with an open sacral like a projector is not knowing when enough is enough. So we've already mentioned about what it means to have a defined and an undefined sacral, but there are a few more things to talk about with an undefined sacral, like a projector has. For one thing, in terms of work, they may have bursts of energy based on the people they're around, and then times where they don't have as much energy. Also, when they need to go to sleep, if they wait until they're exhausted to fall into bed, then that could be almost too late, because what they need is some time to dispel the energy they've picked up through the day so they can have the best sleep possible. And as far as sex goes, because of the energy in the sacral is related to sex and reproduction, and in the case of a projector, since the sacral is undefined or open and the energy is inconsistent, they may feel that each partner they're with feels different. And one more thing in terms of sleep, if a projector is sleeping with a generator type, they may not feel like they get the best sleep they can because the energy of the defined sacral can keep them revved up and unable to sleep and wind down. And one more thing that is unique to projectors and also reflectors is that they can have no motors at all. Unlike manifestors who will always have a motor defined and also to the throat, based on their design and body graph, projectors can have varying energy because it's based on the motors. And although the sacral motor is one of the most powerful motors, the other motors have energy as well. So for instance, in these charts, the body graph on the right side has willpower energy and also solar plexus energy, two motors. Although they don't make it to the throat, they still give energy. And the person on the left-hand side has no motors defined at all. So someone with no motors defined at all may have more trouble getting energy to do what they want to do and may need to be around other people in order to get anything done at all. And as far as work goes, projectors don't have a defined sacral. So that means that they're not going to work exactly like a generator type does. When they do work, it's going to be dependent on the other people around them. What that doesn't mean is that they're restricted to only certain types of jobs. A projector can do any job that they want to, as long as they enter into that job correctly using their strategy. And we'll talk about strategy a little bit later. But for now, know that a projector can be an athlete, a carpenter, a writer, or any type of job that they want. There are no restrictions because they're a projector, as long as they're aware of exactly how their energy works and when enough is enough. Keywords for the projector type are guide and direct. And what that means is that projectors are here to guide and direct the generator types. If you've already watched the manifestor video, you'll already know that a manifestor isn't here to be told what to do. And reflector types use the moon to guide their life. So all that's left is the generator types, both manifesting generators and also generators. And they make up 70% of all the types anyway, so it's quite a big job. But the secret to a projector's role is that they're not here to manage everyone, they're here to manage their own group of people. And knowing that they're not here to manage everyone is one of the key things that a projector should know. Because if they don't, they could end up trying to manage too many people, people who don't want to be managed, and people who, in fact, feel that a projector's guidance is an intrusion and unwanted. In this case, projectors can be ignored, not appreciated, and sometimes can be called bossy and told to mind their own business. And when this happens, a projector can become bitter, which is the theme for a projector in human design. And it makes sense that a projector can become bitter because when people are pushing them away and not listening to their advice, and when they feel devalued for their efforts, it can be difficult to see the positive parts of life. And when bitterness becomes a theme in a projector's life, it becomes like an endless circle because most people aren't drawn to that kind of energy. And even people who actually might have listened to a projector might avoid them. And the projector gets less and less of what they're searching for. And what they're searching for is success. Because when they find the people who are their people, people who can recognize and appreciate the value of a projector and what they can contribute, everybody wins. Because a projector can give their wisdom to people and fulfill their purpose, and the people receiving the advice can make the best choices for their lives as well. And that success comes from doing the job that they were put here to do, by being wise and offering advice and having people respect them for what they can give. With recognition for their talents, a projector can let go of the bitterness and finally receive the rewards that they have worked for. And how are they recognized for their contributions? Well, that's where their strategy comes in. And if you want to learn more about a projector and their strategy, make sure to check out part 2 of the human design projector type. Because when you know more about who you are, life just gets easier.